Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 112 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with Nick Salyers, and we talk about a book that he co-authored called Collegiate, 7 Big Ideas to Make College Awesome. And we talk about how do we help set up, juniors and seniors and high school students for success in college. As parents, how do you do that as a junior or a senior yourself, And then as church leaders, how can we equip, our students and our parents that are in our ministry to help them set their kids up for success as they head off to college. So we talk about a couple principles from the book and just some things that I think are really helpful and practical. And I know for me, I took notes and thought, how can I help use this with students in our church and a plan that we kind of have for seniors as they go throughout the year and we want to equip them. I definitely thought, I want to add this in. I think this book should be part of that journey. And certainly the topics in the book and the things that we talk about here, I want every high schooler to know before they head off to college for sure. So before we jump in the interview, just want to give you a heads up that I can't give you any more details yet, but go ahead and mark off on your calendar August 23rd in the afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern. So if you're, on the West Coast, it's different, but 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern, we got something that we're cooking up that I think will be really helpful that you'll enjoy. So go ahead and mark that off on your calendar and we'll give you some more details as we get closer. But let's go ahead now and jump into my interview with Nick Salyers about how to make college awesome. Well, today I'm talking with Nick Salyers. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick.
You bet. You have a great name, by the way, Nick. It's just an awesome name, just so you know. For anybody who's not familiar with you, doesn't know, could you introduce yourself to us a little bit? Tell us who you are, kind of what you do, and tell us a little bit about the book that you've just written that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so my name's Nick Salyers. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I graduated from the University of Georgia 2 years ago. I was a big swimmer there, so I swam all throughout college, and I now currently work on a startup with my dad and Jeff Henderson. It's called Champion Tribes, and really, really cool business. We are helping equip fathers to engage with their middle school sons. And so it's just something I'm really passionate about and care a lot about. But also recently had the opportunity to write a book called Collegiate, 7 Big Ideas to Make College Awesome. And got to write that with my good friend, Caleb Stevens. And it's funny, actually, literally today, my brother is off at UGA freshman orientation. And so it's kind of cool to have him making this transition to college and, be able to speak into his life based off of, what I learned from writing Collegiate and what I learned from my own college experience and how to make it awesome.
Did you give your brother some secrets, like you just finished there not long ago? Like, where do you go? Where's the best food? You know what I mean? Like what's all the
definitely. I hooked him up with all the secrets. You got the best food and the best places to hang out and the best teachers and classes. Yeah, definitely hooked him up with all the secrets.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody listening, we were talking about before we recorded that the audience is people that lead in different areas of family ministry, some with preschool, some with high school, middle school, elementary, whatever, all over. But what we're going to talk about, preparing kids for college and that transition, I think matters to everybody, right? Like even when you're leading in preschool, you want to lead with the end in mind and what it's going to be like when they graduate and all of that. So, and then some people listening are going to have kids of their own that are in college, going into college, a few years removed, away from going into college. So this will be helpful for them as well. But I would like to start with, what are some of the pitfalls you see students fall into when it comes to this transition, going from high school into college?
Yeah. So for me, in talking with a lot of college students and a lot of parents of college students as well, really what I found is the 2 biggest pitfalls for students are vision and community. And, those are the 2 things that we get questions about the most. And it makes a lot of sense. I think college is an important transition in life. And, it's one where really opportunity abounds, and there's not a whole lot of responsibility actually, but it's kind of the first time students have real freedom and get to make their own choices and their own decisions. But that comes with challenges, right? So, who do I want to become? What do I want to do with my life? What are the things that I like? What am I passionate about? And so not having the proper vision for college and how you can use college to, kind of figure out those things, answer some of those questions. And then also, if anything is going to derail you from your vision for college, it's your community and the people that you surround yourself with. And it's definitely a process to find that community, and find those people that you want to surround yourself with. But it's so vital and so important. We always say that you will move towards and become like those you surround yourself with. And I just think that's, one of the most important principles, not only for college, but really for life. But we have so many students that are worried about community or struggling with finding community. And so I would say that vision and community are really the big pitfalls that I hear about from students.
And that's 2 of the 7 things you talk about, right? That to help make college awesome. Those are 2 of the 7 things. Is that right?
Yeah. So the title of the book is Collegiate: 7 Big Ideas to Make College Awesome. And the 7 big ideas are purpose, vision, community, growth, impact, adventure, and urgency.
I like some of the like adventure and urgency. There's some good things in there. We're obviously not going to be able to hit all of them, but I do want to hear you tell me more about a few of them. And I want to start with vision. You said vision and community were 2 of the biggest pitfalls. What do you mean by vision?
Yeah. So really what we found, and a lot of this is stuff that kind of really I learned from my dad. And we had a lot of great conversations, as I was going off to college and as I was in college about, what's the purpose of college, and what am I there to do? And, what am I trying to get out of college? And really what those are questions of is vision. Where am I headed is kind of the big question that a lot of people have. And man, I remember sitting there in the dining hall my freshman year and, looking around, and, you see people that seem to have it all together, and then you see some people that are falling it apart. And really a lot of times that was my question, is like, are these people just making it up as they go along, or do they have like this perfect plan and vision and course that they're following? And I think the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle. You make up a little bit, and you kind of have a framework that you're building from. But really what we found is with vision is that a lot of students are going into college with what we call normal vision for college. And it's kind of a dangerous thing. It's kind of the what you'll hear from most people. And so how we present the normal vision for college is we use a triangle, because it basically has 3 points to it. And normally this is what kids are thinking when they're going to college. They're thinking, I need to make good grades. I need to make the best grades. I need to build a killer resume. And ultimately the outcome there is, I want to sell myself to the highest bidder at the end of college. So I'm going to make the best grades. I'm going to build this killer resume, become the president of everything, every club, every organization. And then at the end, I'm going to get a payday, right? And so I'm just going to sell myself off to the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. And we think that there's some subtle flaws in that, because it doesn't really sound all that bad on the face of it. But we think within each of those points, there's some subtle flaws that can be really destructive. But we also propose kind of a solution to that. And we think the proper vision for college is what we call the remarkable triangle. And it kind of corrects for some of those subtle flaws.
How would you, how do you describe the remarkable triangle? What's the difference there? Is there any overlap? Because like you said, having good grades, that's fine, right? Having a good resume, that's fine. There's good parts of it too. What is the remarkable triangle, and is there some overlap?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. I feel like I always have to when I'm speaking to parents, especially, I find myself defending myself a little bit when I discuss the normal triangle because I can just hear them, yelling at me. No, I want my kid to make good grades. Like I want them to have a good job at the end of college, and we're totally for those things. We think that those are good things, but if that is our vision for college, make good grades, build a killer resume, sell ourselves to the highest bidder, there's kind of some counterintuitive logic to that most people don't realize. And so the idea really comes from something my dad taught me, is that our actions, how we view things, are going to drive how we do things. So our vision for something is going to drive our actions. And so this is how we talk about the normal triangle, is we say, if our vision for college is to make good grades, what the hollow victory there is, what's going to happen is I'm going to stay up all night cramming for a test, shoving all the information into my head. And then I'm going to go to the test the next day. I'm going to vomit out all that information on the test. And you know what? I'll probably get an A, right? Or your students will, because they're really smart. So they're going to get an A. But what if I gave them that same test 6 months later? How are they going to do on it then? And I always get the students, when I'm talking to them about this, they're like, oh man, not well at all. You can just see it on their faces that they would not do well on that test 6 months later. And so we start asking the question, is that a hollow victory? Yeah, I might get a degree at the end of college, but did I really learn anything? And it's kind of the same way with a resume. Is I can build this killer resume, become president of every single thing I'm involved in, fill all the white space on my resume. But a lot of times when you do that, you're kind of spreading yourself thin, and you're not really having any impact. So you might look good on paper. We call this person a resume builder. They look good on paper, but they don't really make an impact anywhere they're involved. And so any interviewer is going to kind of pick right through that. But an impact maker shines even brighter off the paper. They shine on the resume, but they also shine off the resume. And then kind of ultimately, the goal of this normal triangle, we think, is a little bit messed up as well. Is, most people's goal when they say, I want to make the most money I can coming out of college, what they're really saying is, they kind of have this implicit idea of, I want to retire early. And while that's, again, not a bad thing. What we found, though, is it kind of distorts all those years before retirement. And so, they get in this high paying job that they don't really love. They don't really believe in what they're doing. And really, if your goal is to retire as soon as possible, what you're telling me, this is what I hear when I hear people say that, is they say, I want to stop doing what I'm doing as quickly as possible. And I think that's actually the definition of misery, right? Is I want to stop doing what I'm doing right now as quickly as I can. And so, that ultimate outcome, how we view things, will drive how we do things. So if our vision for college is we're going to do those three things, it kind of leads us to this place that we don't necessarily want to be. And so kind of to fully answer your question, what should my student be doing instead? What should I be encouraging students to do if it's not making good grades and building a killer resume and getting, a high paying job at the end of it? And so what we propose is something that's just slightly different. But what I've found is it really helps a student who's going off to college. Having that proper vision will drive their actions. It'll drive the way they're thinking about it, and that drives their actions. And so what we would say, this is the remarkable triangle, or the remarkable path through college. Instead of making good grades, we think about finding our talents. And then once we've identified some of those talents, instead of just making good grades in those classes, we're going to add skills and knowledge to those talents. And what you do, if you take your talents, discover your talents, add skills and knowledge to them, which is what college is really there to help you do. What you actually develop is a strength. And if you remember, kind of in the normal triangle, you're not going to pass that test 6 months later. But if you develop a strength, you're going to be relying on that strength as much 6 months from now as you are 60 years from now. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a little bit harder to cultivate a strength. But like I said, college is really, really prepared to help us develop strengths if we know to look for opportunities. That's going to help us develop that. And then also in the normal triangle, instead of building a killer resume, the remarkable triangle, what we would propose is instead of just building a killer resume, find your passions and find your hobbies too. And we always like to differentiate between those two things because, we would say a passion is something that you love doing, that energizes you, that gets you out of bed in the morning, but it's also something that you're gifted at or good at. God is specifically kind of blessed you in that area. And it's okay to have hobbies. You need hobbies, but hobbies are those things that you love, but maybe are not necessarily so good at. And so I love, for me, it's like singing, or music in general is, I love it. I always have music on in the car. I'm always singing and dancing when a song comes on. You would not want to hear me play an instrument. You would not want to hear me sing, and I will not do it on this podcast. But just even being able to categorize those two things, it makes it really, really easy using this framework to kind of figure out, okay, what are my strengths? What are my passions? And what are my hobbies? What are some of those things that I love doing, but I'm not really going to make a career out of? And then the last part of the remarkable triangle is aligning those things with your values. And I think definitely here is where, ministry leaders and parents can really lean in the most. I think you can set your kids up to, help them find their talents, help them find their passions, because you know them better than almost anyone else. And so you can kind of, nudge them in a certain direction or tell them what you think some of their talents or passions are. But definitely values is a huge part of this. And how we like to think about values is what's important to me and in what order. And anyone who's going through life is going to have to make trade-offs. But knowing our values, it makes those trade-offs easier to make. Because, you can identify, okay, here's what I'm trading off and here's what I'm losing if I go this other direction. But when I look at my values, faith and family, and whatever it is for you, it makes it very clear which one of those paths I should take, which one of those opportunities I should take. And so ultimately, if we were trying to find, the highest paying job coming out of college in the normal triangle, the goal of the remarkable triangle is actually to find the job you would never want to retire from. And sure. So if we can align, our strengths and our passions and our values, that's what we call IYE, or in your element. And that's where you're going to add the most value to the organization around you, to the people around you, and to the world around you. And ultimately, you'll be able to find this job or this career that you wouldn't want to retire from. And so that's really our hope for college students, is that they would use college as a training ground to figure out those things about themselves. And because college is all about who you're becoming, not necessarily what you're doing. And so it's a great place to really dig in to those different things and learn about who you are and who God made you to be.
That's good. I think just the other day, my wife's parents were visiting up here with us, and her dad's a pastor, been a pastor for over 40 years. And we were talking about like the retirement and different things. And she said to her dad, I just never pictured you as somebody who'd like retire. You know what I mean? And he said, no, not really. It's the same thing you mentioned. Like he'll do he'll do something differently. Probably things will probably change, but the idea of like not doing vocational ministry at all is not really on the radar. You know what I mean? Because he's passionate about it. He loves it. And, you know, some things will change, but it's not like he's something he ever looked at as, you know, when do I get out of it? You know, he's passionate about it. He loves it. How about parents? Like I'm thinking about parents who are listening to this or leaders who want to help their parents with kids who are going off to college. How can they be proactive? How can they help? How can they maybe use the book or even some of the principles from it with their kids?
Yeah. So I think that definitely parents can really lead in helping cast, you know, vision and direction for college. Because I think that, you know, college is really, it can be scary, you know, for a college student is you're entering this brave new world where a lot of times you don't know many people and, you know, it's the first time you're living on your own and, you know, it's the first time you have a little bit of independence and responsibility. And I think that parents can be really proactive about speaking in to their children's lives, you know, early on, you know, even in middle school, but definitely in high school and late high school, and really just encouraging them to kind of like we were talking about, you know, make the right choices, but to have a vision for college. I think that's the most important thing is that students just aren't meandering through college, but they have a vision for it and they see how they can learn more about themselves, but then also, you know, what does God want from their college years too? You know, like what's his vision for their college experience? And so I think that that's definitely a huge way that parents can be proactive or get involved is, you know, be praying for your students, but also, or for your children, but also, you know, have a conversation about, what do you want for college? And I think this is one, I guess, piece of advice I would give parents is we get a lot of kids that come up and talk to us after, you know, we tell them about the remarkable triangles. And a lot of the most fear I ever see from students are parents or when their parents are dictating what they want for their child's life. And so they'll come up to us and they'll be like, hey man, like I really think that I'm on this normal triangle track and I really want to get to the remarkable triangle track, but I don't think like my parents want me to go pre-med. And so that's what I'm doing right now, but I really don't love it. I'm not sure if I'm totally good at it. And I'm not really sure if it's what I want for the rest of my life. And they're like, how do I navigate that? You know, how could I make a change, but convince my parents to let me do it? And so I think that that's, you know, one way that parents can help is, you know, dictate a little bit less and coach or consult and encourage a little bit more. And then I think also the second part of that is I think parents can really model these things to their children. And that's something that my dad has been really, really incredible at is, you know, bringing me alongside him and, you know, not dictating what I'm going to do for my life, but engaging that conversation and then modeling it himself, you know, never asking me to do anything that he wants me to do, but, you know, just kind of nudging and encouraging along the way, but then also modeling, you know, that remarkable triangle himself. And really that's where this whole idea came from is, my dad works for Chick-fil-A and, he learned, you know, really the principles that I've baked into this book from Truett Cathy. And Truett Cathy is a guy who did exactly the remarkable triangle is, you know, his 401k was fully funded. You know, he was the sole owner of a $6 billion business. And I walked into his office when he was 93 years old. And I literally asked him, I said, Truett, like your 401k is fully funded. Like you could easily be retired. Why are you still in the office? He was in the office every single week, even at 93 years old. And he looked at me and he said, Nick, why would I stop doing something that I love this much? And I've always just been so inspired and encouraged by that. And that's something that my dad has been able to model for me, of just, you know, really helping me discover what I'm good at and what I love in life and my values. And I think that all parents naturally play that role in their kid's life is your kids are looking for affirmation and encouragement from you. And even though it might not seem like it sometimes, especially in those teenage years, they're desperately craving it. And I think that's a huge role and a huge opportunity that parents have to really help their students make those big transitions in life.
How about church leaders? Because I'm listening to you talk about this, and I'm making notes thinking about our seniors and parents and future generations of seniors and all that. How do you think they could help families, help seniors who are going, or even juniors, get ready for college in their ministry?
Yeah, a lot of times with church leaders, I think it's just even just having vision for having that conversation. Is I think that preparing your students really comes down to just that, of actively engaging that conversation and kind of nurturing or encouraging students with that conversation. And so if you never have a conversation with your students about their vision for college, I think that's step one right there is, have a time, kind of maybe right before students transition off to college where, you're engaging in that dialogue, that conversation. I really think that that's so important because I see so many students, and I saw it when I was a student, and I see it now, that don't have a vision for college, and that is where they get derailed. Is they get off to college, and there's all this opportunity and all this freedom, and they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of times they don't make the best choices when they're given all that freedom and all that opportunity. And so even just a parent or a church leader, having a one-on-one conversation or a group conversation, and even just presenting a vision for college, what college could look like for those students, can go a really, really long way in shaping and forming the way that your students are thinking about college. And that's going to drive their actions. Like I said earlier, how you view things will drive how you do things. That principle just applies so well to your students, is the way that they're thinking about college is going to drive their actions, which is driving who they're becoming in the process.
Yeah, one thing to take away too, as a church leader, is be intentional about integrating conversations about what's next, whether it's college or moving into adulthood, getting a job, whatever it might be, transition wise, having that built in almost to the rhythm of your year for seniors, especially. Whereas sometimes we just feel like that's a whole separate area and we just don't talk about it, which probably isn't smart, right? I think we're even at our church, having learned from other churches and just even talking with our own leaders and talking with parents whose kids have graduated, before, we're trying to do more intentionally with seniors. We have a whole senior plan. And I think about this book would be a great addition to that, helping prepare them for a lot of the practical side of the transition. And I think the key is not looking at that that's not church or spiritual or whatever. So looking at it no, it's all important. It all matters. And I think from our experience, I'm sure you would agree, the more we can help them with all of this, it's all going to help their faith too. Because a big part of it is it's all faith oriented, right? The purpose part, the vision part, the community part, right? That's one of the biggest mistakes I see college students make is they don't quickly find a community of the right people. And then they just happen into another community of not the right people. You know what I mean? Because that happens too. So that's important. And
that's really, what is this all taken from? It's Proverbs 29, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I think that's true for students. If they don't have vision, they're going to perish on some level. And I think that's true of church leaders. If there's no vision for helping your students transition to college, your students are going to perish in college. And that was a big part of my story, was just, I made some decisions about what I wanted my college experience to be about and what I didn't want it to be about the summer I left for college. And, that was thanks to some great mentors and definitely my parents. But that's really what helped me get, off on the right foot in college and helped me find the community, that allowed me to thrive and helped me find, a discipler in college and all these other things. And so, I really do think that just engaging the conversation and having some vision for it goes a really, really long way.
Well, before I let you go, I definitely want to get like an update on Champion Tribes. We had Jeff Henderson on the podcast, episode 52. I had to go look it up. There's no way I memorized that stuff. But so that was the end of year 1, and now we're in like beginning year 3 of the podcast. So it's been a little while. It was launching then. You'd done some pilot groups, but like publicly, it was just about to launch. So now, it's a year later. How's it going? Tell us, and for anybody who's not familiar with Champion Tribes, tell us what that is specifically, and give us an update. How are things going?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of funny. I love how these two conversations, maybe on the surface seem unrelated, like college students and middle schoolers. They're actually so related because what I'm talking about, with Collegiate and this vision for college is really how I ended up doing Champion Tribes. Is I found that I had a passion for father-son relationships, and I found that I had a passion for entrepreneurship and a few strengths that have allowed me to kind of start Champion Tribes with my dad and Jeff Henderson. And so it's kind of cool that really this framework that I'm encouraging you and your students to follow is really what led me to Champion Tribes. But for all the people out there that don't know what Champion Tribes is it's really based on the idea of the Jewish bar mitzvah. And we just think that is a lost idea and a lost practice in the modern society, the modern Western society. And my dad was invited to a bar mitzvah, just our neighborhood friends, when I was about 6 years old, and just blown away by that experience and the powerful moment that was created for that young boy, and just how that was going to impact and influence his life. And my dad kind of sat there and was just, weeping in the back and said on the way home to my mom that, man, when Nick turns 13, I want to do something like that with him. And thankfully, he didn't just say that, he acted on it. And so when I turned 12, he kind of gathered up a group of other dads, intentional dads, and their sons. And we just spent a year just deep diving on two things. What does it look like to be a champion in life from God's perspective and from your dad's perspective? And we just spent a year talking about that. And we, gathered together as a group, maybe once or twice a month. And it ultimately culminated in this blessing moment where I got to receive the blessing of my father. And that was just such a special and powerful moment. And really has given me the freedom to live not for my father's affirmation, but from my father's affirmation. And that just made such a huge difference in my life, and really made a huge difference in college. I had a lot of friends in college. I was on the swim team in Georgia, and so I had a lot of friends who weren't believers, but also had a lot of friends that really struggled with some serious stuff in college, and I also had friends that didn't struggle with those same things, and for me, I saw it black and white. I saw that it all came back to whether or not they had received a blessing from their father. And so the Lord just really put it on my heart, really towards the end of college, to do something about it. I started asking myself the question, why aren't more dads, engaging deeply in their son's life like my dad did? And, why aren't more dads concerned about this idea of giving their son their blessing? And how can we make it easier for dads to do that? And so that's really how Champion Tribes got started. And so we launched it last fall. And we have, about 200 dads going through Champion Tribes actively right now. But essentially what it is it's just a tool that equips busy dads to invest deeply in the lives of their middle school sons through a rite of passage experience. And so we have a digital curriculum that coaches the dads through each step of the process, and they form a tribe or a small group of fathers and sons to go through it with. And we give them a physical kit. We call it the Champion Kit, that kind of helps them navigate this experience with their sons. And man, it is just such a powerful tool for fathers, for churches who are trying to equip their parents to lean in during that difficult time in life. I think it's difficult on the dad's side, as they're busy with work and they're in the building years of life. And it's difficult on the son side as well. The middle school years are not easy. They're awkward. You're transitioning. But you're also looking for affirmation. And if you don't get that affirmation from your dad, if you're not hearing that blessing coming from him, if you're not seeing it in a tangible way, you're going to spend the rest of your life looking for that affirmation. And oftentimes you're going to look for it in the wrong places. You're going to look for it in, drugs and alcohol. You're going to look for it in women. You're going to look for it in success and fame. But Champion Tribes is just a really powerful way for dads to be that voice in their son's life at the perfect time. And we really think that it's, something that's God ordained. There's a reason that he chose 13 for the bar mitzvah. And there's a reason that he had Jewish fathers intentionally leaning in and engaging in their son's life at that specific time. And so we're trying to modernize it. We're trying to make it really easy for busy dads to bless the life of their son.
That's awesome. I love the idea. Like when Jeff came on the podcast, it was launching. And he'd already done some pilot groups and everything like that. But just the concept is great. So congrats. I'm glad to see there's, some great success here in the first year. And I hope people listening will think about doing that if they have, sons that are getting close to that age or at that age. But even at their church, maybe that's something that I want to do as well, is pass that on to dads that are part of our church and see if they could consider doing something like that together. The tribe part of it, like not doing it with your son, but then also doing it with other dads and their kids too, I'm sure is just even more powerful.
It's so powerful because it creates the right context. A lot of times one-on-one with your dad can be awkward and, you both don't know what to do. And, it's awkward, but doing it in the tribe context, all that melts away and you're there with your friends. And honestly, this is a funny thing that we learned through it is sometimes your son or your kids just hear it better coming from someone else. And my dad told me that this happened with him is like, he would tell me something 100 times and then, Jeff would say it to me and I would, be like, Dad, can you believe what Jeff said? Like, that's so awesome. Like, and he's like, yeah, I've told you that 100 times, but you never heard it coming from me. And so it's just a really powerful context in which to have those kinds of conversations with your son.
Well, that's awesome. How can people connect with you if they have questions about Collegiate or about Champion Tribes?
Yeah, so for Collegiate, we have a website. It's www.makecollegeawesome.com. We also have an Instagram with that handle, Make College Awesome. And Collegiate is available on Amazon. That's the best place to get it. And then for Champion Tribes, it's www.championtribes.com. And you can learn all about, Champion Tribes and how to form a tribe and what you need to get started. And we're also on all social media for Champion Tribes, just at Champion Tribes.
Cool. Well, Nick, thanks for coming on the podcast, for writing the book. I think it's very helpful. That's a big transition. So it'd be great for college students and parents and church leaders and everybody to lean into that and use that and help students make that transition well. But also for the work you do with Champion Tribes. It's early, but I know you're having a great impact, and I can only imagine like how big it's going to be 10 years from now or something like that, which is really cool. So thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you giving us the time.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nick.
Well, there you have it. That was a fun interview. I wish I was half as mature and smart as Nick is and when I was his age, but I hope you took some things from that. Maybe you are a parent and you got a kid who's getting close to going into college, and that's going to be helpful for you. Or maybe you're like me and you're a church leader who wants to help, students and parents in your church. I hope that was helpful for you. And some action items I think about are obviously get the book Collegiate. If you're a parent, use it with your child, read through that together, help have some of those conversations preparing for college. If you're a leader, get it in the hands of a few parents and then talk with them and see what their thoughts on it. Get it in the hands of a few college students or some high school seniors, and then maybe work this into an overall plan for seniors during their high school year at your church? Like, what are the different things they can do? Maybe something different each month. That's what we do, to help lean into them and prepare them for what's next. And as I talked with Nick, I thought, well, I definitely want to take this and put it into our existing plan to help seniors. And there's an episode I did with Ben Kearns a while back, where we talked a little bit about a senior plan that they do as well. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, that might be helpful. But you can get all the links and notes and everything in the show notes. Nick Salyers sent a couple images, pictures of the things that he was talking about, and you can get those in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 112. I hope that was helpful. Again, be sure to mark off August 23rd, 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern on your calendar, and we'll tell you what's coming pretty soon. Until then, hope you have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.